Hey everybody, it's me again, and today we're going to make el nopal from Loteria, and I attempted this a couple of times. See, that one didn't work out so well. The second one was, it was a little bit better, but it was definitely not what I was going for. I don't know what the heck happened on the left side, but anyway, here it is. Third time's a charm, I think. I really do think that is applicable in this case. So we're going to start bottom up. And I chose these two. I wanted to alternate between these two. I wasn't going to try to single out the stones, just kind of evenly disperse these amongst themselves in the first 4 to 5 rows. So let's get our supplies. We're gonna get the 4-pound crystal Fireline. It's white-ish, mostly, yeah, it's white. And then, of course, you guys know that I love my size 10 pony sewing needles, but they're really bead needles or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. I use these for the ear wire at the end. I didn't use them for fringe because there's no fringe on this design. I couldn't find my scissors, so I'm using my handy pliers. They're pretty much the best thing ever. Okay, let's get started. This is gonna be a bead with me type of thing, so I'm doing the whole thing. I'm not cutting any corners here. So we're gonna start out with 2 beads. We're doing a single bead foundation row. So don't forget to leave a pretty good size tail at the end, and then work the needle through the bottom of the first bead, and that will create a loop. I like to hold the tail taut between my thumb and my forefinger so nothing gets a little wonky, but it's going to feel wonky regardless. And now work your way through the top of the second bead. And that's just going to secure it. Since we're not working fringe, you could actually do that one more time so it feels a little more secure, but I'm lazy, so I'm going to make things harder for myself. And then you get your third bead and you're going to do the same. You're going to work through the top of that second bead to kind of loop it around. And then you'll see over time how it's a little, woven pattern. Just like a little loop, de-loop, de-loop, de-loop. And so we're going to work this for 15 beads. It's good to, if you're stacking things, it's good to always do an odd number of beads if you can, because that little tail that I'm tugging on right now, that will be at the bottom and you won't have to work with that. But if you ever make a design where you count even numbers, when you get back to that tail on the second row, it's going to be a little annoying and you'll just have like one little extra step to weave. It's not a big deal, but I don't know, for me it's a little bothersome sometimes, so I do try to stick to odd numbers when I'm creating a foundation row. So for this one, it's going to be 15 beads across, just like this, and we're going to do 3 rows of white. So now I have my 15 beads on the foundation, and you're going to grab 2 beads for the second row to start out. And you work under the second little loop of thread. You skip that first one and you work under the second one. And you pull the needle through. Perfect. And now you're going to get the needle and you're going to work into the bottom of that second bead and then into the top of the first bead. Sometimes you can do it in one little movement like this, but sometimes you have to pull it out through the top of the second bead and then go back through the top of the first bead. It just depends on how the beads want to sit and how annoying your thread is being. And then you're going to want to work up through the bottom of the second bead, just like this. If I can get it. Dang it. There we go. And there you have it. So this is like all the brick stitch videos I've recorded thus far. But when we get to the third row, that's where it's going to get a little different. And then you work the rest with 1 bead at a time. You know the drill. So now that we've gotten to the end of our second row, we're going to work one bead into that last loop per usual, nothing crazy. But now this is where it's going to get different, because we're going to do something that I haven't shown y'all yet. And I'm very excited because I want to do pieces where we have irregular edges, and this would be a really great piece to practice before you get to that. And you don't have to make the nopales. You can do anything. I'm going to show you how to work your edges when it's time to have one overlapping. So get your 2 beads on your needle to start the new row per usual. However, we are now going to work into the first loop. I know, it's wild, but we're going to work into the first loop of the second row, which is basically going against everything I've ever said up to this point. But when we do that, we're going to get that nice little overlapping first bead. So you work them the same exact way. See, I like to make a little tunnel and then thread the needle through. It's a very satisfying feeling, but you know, that's just me. So now we're going to work through the bottom of that second bead like we always do. But as you can see, that first bead is hanging over the edge. And sometimes it looks like you didn't do it the right way, because when they're all loose before you pull it taut, the beads can just kind of sit over the beads below it, like in line, and you're sitting there thinking, oh no, I didn't do it right, but then you did. So just take a deep breath, work slowly, think of the tortoise. And then you'll just work the rest of the row as usual until you get to the end. One bead at a time. You get the last bead and work it into the last loop. It's on my finger. And then you work up through like normal. And then here's where it gets a little wild again. You get one more bead, and then you loop it. You work it into basically the same last loop that we just worked the previous bead. Get it under there, and then you pull it through. And it's kind of want to be a little loosey-goosey, but that's okay. Just kind of pull it taut, and then work the needle under through the bottom of that last bead that you just put on. Oops, poked myself. And then you pull it out. Oh my god, my thread is driving me insane. Yep, see? Check it out. Boink. And that's it. So at the beginning of the row, you're going to work the 2 at a time, but at the end of the row, you work 1 at a time. But see, now we have that overlapping situation, but see, we have 15, 14, 15, 14, and it's like that all the way to the top. So now for the earth. Yes, the earth. I'm not doing any particular specific pattern with alternating the brown and the brown, the burnt sienna and the brown. Just know that you have a little liberty here. You can do all one color, and in fact you can do that through the whole thing. I use 3 different shades of green for the nopal, but if you want to just do one color green, that's totally fine too. So here's for reference. I'm going to try to emulate that little hill in the ground, but feel free to just work all the way across if you don't want to deal with that. I totally get it. And then we'll work this row 13 beads because it's a short one. And what I like to do every time I start a new row or end a new row, I always just double check myself, because there have been times where I didn't pay attention and I didn't put that extra little bead hanging over the end and had to pull a lot of stuff back. You can just add on a bead, but I don't personally like to do that because I'm a masochist. We're going to work these 2 beads into the first loop of the previous row, just like that. And then again up through the bottom of the second bead and down through the top of the first bead. Oh look, my tail got stuck. Always be mindful when your thread is very long. Once it gets to that sweet spot, you can just go and not worry about it pulling on anything, you're solid. But you know, just take your time and be aware. Okay, again, now that we're at the end, I just want to go through these with you, and I will do that throughout the piece, so don't worry if you miss it one time. I just want to get the repetition in your mind. So you work that second to last bead as normal, and then you're going to get one more bead and work under the same loop as the previous bead, and this will be your little hangover bead. So like that. And then you'll pull it through and then work through the bottom of it just like you would any of the other beads to pull out through the top. And there you go. So let's get this going. So now that I've just finished our 4th row, as you can see, we're going to start incorporating the sky. So the first 3 rows are white, and the 4 rows above it are going to be the ground, which are brown. So white and then brown. And now we can incorporate the sky. I've listed every row bead by bead, and I will make my chart and link it below. Just at the moment, I'm working on that. And again, I will explain why in the community section. I don't want to talk about it here. The wound is still fresh. I clearly need to go to my local bead shop and get new big eye needles because I thought I had some. I thought I had a whole package, but once I got to this part, I realized I didn't have any. And this is an old one, and it's quite rusted. The last time I used it was the last time I made a video, I think. So here's where I'm starting the nopal, and as you can see, I started with dark green, but like I said in the beginning, if you don't want to deal with different shades of green, I completely understand, and you can just sort of ignore the dark green, green, and light green prompts and work with one green. So I'm gonna have to start another thread because that was getting a little short. If you have really sharp scissors, it'll cut through the Fireline, no problem. But if you don't, you'll be struggling. And of course, as I've shown in other videos, if you pinch the tip of your Fireline with your pliers, it's very much easier to thread it through the needle. Trust me. So when you add new thread to your piece, you want to weave it in before you start working through that bead. So as you can see, I moved a row or two, preferably about 3 rows down and away from the bead that you're wanting to continue working in, and that's just to make it more stable, to reinforce it. You don't want to start right at the bead because then it'll be very loose, and you're probably going to have to go in and reinforce it with thread anyway, so you may as well do it right the first time. And then at that point, you can just ignore the end of the previous thread that you were working with. It's not so much like knitting or crochet where you want to work the next couple of stitches with all the yarn and then you drop off. With this, you can just drop off immediately, no problem. And here is where my thread is going to get caught on the edge of my bead mat and the needle slipped right off the thread. And I wanted to cry. And this is not fun, but it is what it is. Also, that weird little spot under my left hand that looks like it has stuff stuck to it, that's my daughter's glitter glue situation. This is my craft table, so I do everything on this table, which is why there are weird little spots, and it looks like, I don't know what it looks like, but it doesn't look pretty. So apologies for that, but that's actually glue remnants and glitter. So here I wish I would have left this third dark green bead out and made it actually 2 blue instead of 1 blue between the dark green and the dark red bead here, because now that I look at the finished piece, I kind of wish that little part wasn't poking out. So in this bead that I'm working right now, if you want to replace it with a blue, I think it would be more aesthetically pleasing, unless you just like his little butt. It looks like he's like dancing or something. Okay, so here I'm starting with a lighter red than the previous 3 reds I used, as stated in the list over to my right. You can use 2 different reds like I did, or you can just use 1 red. I just wanted to imply maybe that the prickly pears that were on top were getting a little more sunshine. That's all. I also thought after I made this piece how cute it would be to make them pink or fuchsia, more like the actual little tunitas that, you know, are on the nopales. So it's really just design choice, but I think it would be really cute to make some with pink. Maybe even 2 different shades of, okay, I'm gonna stop. Okay, so now that I'm at the blue, I'm just gonna go ahead and skip to the next row, and you can pause it if you need and work the rest of the row in blue beads. Okay, here's another one of those moments of slight regret, woulda, coulda, shoulda type of situations. I really wish I had worked this bead I'm working right here in red instead of blue, and then just added an additional green bead next to it. Because in the final piece, it's not on the outside of the cactus as much as it is like kind of on top of it, and it's the only one really like that. And it's kind of bothering me, but you know, you just gotta let go of these things sometimes. Okay, so now for the rest of this row, we're going to be working in blue. There are 4 more blue beads to work in this row, so I'm going to go ahead and skip to the next row and pause if you need and meet me there. After this green bead, we will have 6 more beads to weave till the end of this row, and then we'll all be in blue, and then we'll turn, and then we'll work 6 more beads in blue at the beginning of row 25. And then we'll get to the top of the nopal, so you can pause and meet me there, so you don't have to watch me stitch 12 blue beads. It's a little redundant. Okay, so now that we have our first 6 blue beads of row 25, we can move now to the top of the nopal, starting with a red bead. Okay, so now I'm at the last little stretch of blue beads in row 26. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the last 3 rows of this piece, which will be basically woven in 3 rows of white, but rows 27 and 28 are both in blue, so I won't make you watch me work 2 rows of the same color because that would be a little grueling. So here we are, starting the last 3 rows of white beads, and I don't know, I'm a little excited. So now I'm going to grab one of these little silver plated wire guards, and I like the finishing touch this adds. It's very, I don't know, it's cute, looks clean, and it protects your thread really well as opposed to trying to make your own little loop with seed beads. That also looks good, but it's just a different aesthetic, and this one really protects the integrity of your thread, so it's something I like to add when I can. But there are other ways around it. So to get it to the center of the piece at the top, we're just going to weave our way back to the middle, to the 15th bead. Because remember, we have 15 total. To the 15th bead. We have 15 total, so we're going to get to the very center. So you'll count 7 on either end, and we'll make the little wire guard sort of straddle. No, maybe not straddle. I'm sorry. Okay, listen, we're gonna make his little legs hover over the very center bead of the top in the middle, center, middle, top, above. Okay, so we're gonna count 7 from the left and 7 from the right, and we're gonna get that center bead, and he's gonna just hover over it. So you're gonna come out of either the 7th bead, the 7th bead from one side, let's put it that way, and then work the needle up his leg and then over down through the 2nd leg, just like this. So you see now he's kind of hovering over that middle bead there, and then you'll skip that middle bead obviously and work down into the next bead. So you'll be working specifically the 7th bead on either end. I feel like there's an easier way to explain this, and I'm just being a weirdo right now. Here at this point, I'm just going to work through the legs a few times to strengthen the attachment. And there's different ways you can do it. You can just kind of do a loop, 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 or you can do a loop and then work back through the same side, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm not communicating this properly, and I really could. I feel like I could draw pictures and that would be better, but I think you understand what I mean. Just work through the wire guard several times until you feel like it's strong and it's not gonna separate from your piece, because that's the most important thing. And if you want, you can just make this one and attach it to a nice pretty chain, or you can make a second one and create a pair of earrings. It's really up to you. Or if you want to get really cheesy, you can make 3 so that you have earrings and a necklace. And you don't have to wear them all at the same time, just you have options. So now that I've woven that in pretty well, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. And this is where I like to use my scissors, and then sometimes I even like to burn the end if it pokes out with a lighter, but it looks pretty good from here. And then I will begin. We will commence my least favorite aspect of the entire fiasco, which is weaving in the ends. And that's where I like to use my little handy, what do you call it? Oh yes, the big eye needle. That really will help you work those tiny little ends. And I'm not going to talk through this, I'm just going to suffer. And now, maybe not my favorite part, but this is definitely the most gratifying part, which is adding the ear wire. Oh my goodness. Because it's done. It's over. It's all over. Yes. Here we go. And then doink. And then make the second one. This is when you can really tell if you have a very tight stitch, because if you do work it in a tight way, it can actually kind of warp the piece and it won't lay flat. Oh, oops, just kidding. Wrong ones. Yeah, and if you work loosely, you'll be able to see gaps. So you gotta just kind of find, you know, your sweet spot. Anyway, until next time, mwah.